Sorry, I was talking about Emily Parnell. You might have been talking about Emily Ponting.
Ah, yeah, I was. Okay, you know what? I think let's just start. Yeah. All right, so hello and welcome. And for those of you who don't already know who I am, which I doubt, my name is Nicola Thomas, and I'm one of the tutors at WSA. I'm also the convener for this session 6, the final session of WSA's Fine Arts Symposium for the class of 2020. So welcome to everyone. I'd also like to introduce Tanya Judd, our co-convener for this session. Tanya Judd is a WSA alum. She graduated in 2014 from WSA's Fine Art MA course, and prior to which she also completed WSA's Fine Art BA degree course. She works with video, installation, and painting, and describes herself as an artist, writer, filmmaker, and community and youth worker. So hello, Tanya.
Very good.
Did I get all of that right?
Yeah, where'd you get that from?
I got some of that from your website, actually.
Oh, is that still running? Yeah.
So what would you like to add to that? How would you kind of like describe yourself as an artist?
As an artist, I think we're all trying to figure out what that means, as in, you know, the future. We're all trying to sort of, well, it's day by day at the minute, isn't it? I mean, and it's been like that for me as an artist for some time in the real world. Getting my hands on what I can, really, to get that fix, which is mainly sort of documenting news and political stories and maybe adapting those with Instagram filters, stuff that's available and to hand, with the idea that at some point I might get a little bit of time to myself to do maybe something else with it. But it does actually, it's good enough for me. I'm always sort of doing something as I'm moving. So yeah, that's kind of it at the minute.
And are you predominantly still working with film?
I've made some paintings recently. I've done some landscape paintings. I haven't done a wall for a long time, which I'm hoping to do in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, everything really. The film is quite, I find films more easily accessible than it used to be with the phone. I first started going making film when it was manual editing in the 90s. So, you know, it's very much to hand now. And yeah, kind of little snippets, little notes, sketches, really.
And with the stuff that you're doing, like on the wall, is that still kind of like graffiti based, or would you say that's more painting? How would you describe that?
Always try and avoid the G word, because that's kind of imposed on us. But yeah, it's been a while, and yeah, there's lots of change within that as well at the moment. It's an interesting field to be looking at in this new situation. It's just that, yeah, it's the freedom of being able to do that. That's kind of like a physical fix, I guess, I haven't done for a while.
Okay, great, thank you. And it's also my pleasure to introduce the panelists for this session, the artist Bryony Thompson. Hello, Bryony, can you give us a wave? Thank you. Jess Curtis. Great. Tomi Olumide. Hi, Tomi. Emma Davis. And lastly, Jasmine Young. Thank you. Unfortunately, Caroline Perkins, Nadia Sawa, and Emily Jane Ponting won't be with us this afternoon. So what I'm going to do is, before we have each of our panelists speak, I'm going to introduce all of the artists by giving my own personal take on their work. And they're perfectly able to agree or disagree with whatever it is that I have to say about their work during their talk. And then after which I'm going to basically shut up, as tutors do have the knack of hogging the conversation, and pass on to my co-convener, Tanya Judd, to ask questions of the panelists. So let's begin. Let me try and share my screen again. Looking at the work of Brian E. Thompson, it's easy to see how comparisons to the work of Patrick Caulfield with his brightly coloured line paintings and prints, or the images of Michael Craig Martin, or that of Gary Hume or even Julian Opie could be made. However, Thompson's artwork manages not to be derivative. Incorporating a post-pop art aesthetic and at times referencing celebrity and portraiture, her paintings and digital drawings have a detached edge, a boldness and a confidence, which is also unafraid to delve into abstraction. Through her analytical, cerebral and thought-provoking work, Jess Curtis considers the object as subject, specifically an object's associations and relationships through past ownership and memory, the object as an abstracted or maybe reconstructed copy in an attempt to substitute absence and replace loss. And also considers ideas around archaeology and artifact, preserving and revealing, all of which culminate into a sophisticated way of addressing grief, loss, memory, and the personal significance of objects. Bold patterns, bold colors, motifs, repetition, and print. Drawing inspiration from textiles and the fashion industry, Nadia Sarwar interrogates the design and imagery of fashion print, how it appropriates, how it modifies, and how it consumes. Whether constructing her own patterns and motifs through her acrylic and pen drawings, or breaking them down in the form of fragments or digital collages, Sarwar seemingly blends the traditional and the digital into her drawing practice. Material, objects, drawing, sculpture, installation, and performance. Tomi Olumide's work is rich in both color and content, and her work acknowledges and often references her African heritage. There is a playfulness to her work, and whether conscious or not, there is also a tactility to her work, which comes through her combination of materials. In addition, Olumide's work has to be experienced, whether it is her performances or latterly her installations. Regardless, along with her work, there is also the burdensome awareness of the intersectional politics, indifference, and othering imposed on the work of artists who are neither male and or white. The visual material of digital film, fluorescent bold colors, pixelated images, visual collage of moving images, looped video, and GIFs. Snippets of manga and anime, a filmic riff on Japanese superflat, not quite kitsch, but not quite kawaii either. For me, all of these elements factor into the work of Emma Davis. And for those reasons and countless others, Emma Davis's work could be considered as a prime example of post-net aesthetics, as in art made after and influenced by the rise of the internet. Artwork that is a product of its time, that only could have been made at this moment in time. Place, culture, and symbols are recurrent themes within Jasmine Young's work. Through sculpture and performative acts, Young interrogates her objects through transformation, dislocation, and abstraction. And like the work of Jess Curtis, Young also considers the object as a form of reconstructed copy. In Young's final year, her previous muse of the Yakult bottle was supplanted by the Japanese tori. Of course, Young's use of the tori could easily be viewed as representative of the threshold between two cultures, that of Japan and Britain. but perhaps its use was a subconscious reference to herself, as in crossing the threshold of that of student of art to that of artist, or maybe symbolic of every threshold that has to be crossed when it comes to art, that of the artist making work and their audience who both views and consumes it. For the final year of her degree, Emily Jane Ponting made the bold, and many would view as the totally crazy decision to relocate from the paint studio to the new media studio. It was bold and it was right. For someone so new to filmmaking and so initially fearful of technology and averse to using Premiere Pro, Ponting ironically has a natural capacity for making films. Films which are somewhat documentary in approach, where her honesty, authenticity, self-observation, and self-reflection within her films, as well as her content and use of narration, make them intimate, personal, interesting, and at times very moving. Caroline Perkinson's paintings need to be seen, and they need to be experienced in the flesh, as these images mediated through the computer screen do not do her work justice. After 3 years, and especially now in her final year, I still don't really know what Perkinson's work is about, but now that doesn't really matter. What matters is that for some of her paintings at least, they have the capacity to hold my attention and intrigue me enough to give more than a cursory look at the work, to stay with the work, to look further and contemplate. Thank you. I'm trying to stop sharing. Thanks. So that was kind of like my introduction and my take on all of the panelists' work. So let's start with Bryony.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'd like to talk about my final age project before and during lockdown and how it progressed a bit. So before lockdown, I was interested in how celebrities use social media to sell their image online. I created these paintings, which were on 100 by 120 centimeters canvases. I wanted to take away the details and almost dehumanize the portrait that I was being given online by the artist. And I wanted to just create the shape of the face by just using the colors, taking away all the details. I chose each of these celebrities because of their iconic accessories, hairstyles, or anything they're particularly known for. So when lockdown happened, I started to work a lot more digitally based. I started looking more at Billie Eilish's photos that were online of her that she'd posted, because she has a very recognizable, iconic, unique look compared to all the other celebrities that I was looking at before. So I started to digitally paint her and take away all these details and just leave it very flat, very minimal. And I started using lots of different colors and things. So the process started to become what I was more interested in than what I was painting at the before Corona. It was all, I enjoyed the painting part of it, but after it was kind of like I enjoyed the process. So I started to change around the paintings and move each layer and make them bigger and smaller, just to distort the image a bit more. And I found this was a good way for me to actually focus on something other than what was going on in the world around me. So it was quite an escape. It was like an escape route for my mind, really. Like I started just exploring the techniques more. So I then started to paint these drawings onto canvases. So for these two pieces, I used 100 centimetres by 100 centimetre canvases, and I used acrylic to paint them. I chose the square canvases because it hinted back to the idea of Instagram's like iconic square layout that it has. So I wanted to hint back to where the images originally came from and how it had got that part, and hint back at the process. Okay, so that won't show. Okay. Because of the issues I had with space and during like painting on large canvases that I had before Corona, I had to move on to using slightly smaller canvases. So I started using 61 by 61 centimetre canvases, which weren't tiny, but they were not as big as I liked them being, because I felt like the bigger canvases gave more impact. So I started to crop the images that I'd created digitally and focus on certain aspects or shapes within that digital painting. And then the cropped image that I'd paint onto the canvases to distort who the celebrity is a bit more, but the colours are still hinting at who it could be. So I started swapping colours around, just experimenting a lot more digitally, which I really enjoyed. So obviously, because of not being able to put them all up in the studio space next to each other or hang them up on the walls, I just wanted to put them in my garden, really, like the biggest space I had, just to see what they would all look like next to each other, because I'd made them all individually, but I hadn't actually looked at what they'd look like next to each other. So this was just kind of a little celebration that I'd handed in, and I just wanted to see what they all look like with the finished pieces that I'd done on canvases. So yeah. That's it for me.
Thank you, Bryony.
Good work.
So Tanya,
Yes.
questions? Do you have some questions for Bryony?
Yeah, great work, Bryony. They all looked really good at the end there. Which one do you think is your favourite? Which one do you think you're most pleased with? Have you got one?
Yeah, let me just go back on. This one.
Yeah, why's that?
So I just like the size. The colours, it was the only one that I hadn't done a really dark background on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I kind of prefer a neutral brown kind of beige kind of colour. And just for me, I don't know why. I think it's because all the others were quite close to the face and quite intimate. But this one was a bit more taken back. It's more obvious who the person is I'm painting. But I don't know, it just spoke to me a bit more than the others. I think it was a turning point where I wanted to really distort the images more. I think it was that kind of, it had more meaning to me for some reason. It just spoke to me a bit more.
Yeah, it's going in a good direction. I would say that, because I do like a bit of abstract. Something that struck me that was quite interesting was the link, I don't know if you thought about it, with the fact you're removing the features, the senses was a word I didn't hear, that in these images which are representing this modern culture, it's fitting that you've removed, you know, the senses, the features. Have you thought about that at all?
The idea of me taking away like the details of the eyes and all the smaller details was that these celebrities are really a product that are being sold to us by how they look and what they wear. And it is just a product that they want us to buy into. So I thought, if I take away the human element, there's still that product. So, but moving it around, I wanted to see how far you could pull that product apart, and would it still look like, oh, I know who that is, or oh, that's. So I think that's why I stuck with Billie Eilish, because other celebrities, like I did like Ed Sheeran, it was the hair, and then I did like Elton John with the glasses and things like that. But I just felt like Billie Eilish is just
You can completely see who it is still, can't you, without all those elements.
Zoomed in on the face, and one small segment is green. You're like, oh, I get it. For me, I instantly got it, and I've shown people, and they've gone, oh, I know who that is. And I'm like, but it's only the little bit of colour that gives you that hint, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jess, you've made a really interesting point in the chat. Do you want to elaborate on it a bit more?
Yeah, so I don't know if you've read it, Bryony, what I put. So I've essentially written, pushing the boundaries to see how far you can distort an image while still allowing the subject to be recognisable. I mean, I'm sort of cheating a bit because I've been in Bryony's group crits with her. So I understood that was her intention anyway.
It's handy.
But I think that Bryony has been really successful with doing that. And, you know, my comment is essentially adhering to what Bryony was already speaking about just a second ago. So I don't know if I can elaborate as such, but I just think that she has been really successful in doing that.
How far do you think you'll go with the abstraction? Does it always have to have a recognisable feature about it, do you think?
So just before handing, I started changing the colours completely and not even using the colours that were in the original image. So I moved into like bright, bold colours, like red, like really deep colours. And it wasn't really doing anything. So I moved on to using like pastel colours because she's so known for her bold look that I wanted to go something completely opposite and go into like pastels. But I didn't think they looked like her. But then people would say to me, oh, yeah, it's Billie Eilish because of the hood or the jewellery. But I painted it in completely different colours, like pinks and things that you'd never see her in. And they still kind of got it. So I don't know. I'm still like deep diving into the
good.
Yeah. I don't think will ever stop because I don't know. I think it's just a big circle, isn't it? It would just go round and round, yeah.
Yeah, do you see it moving on to any other mediums, or you're going to remain in printing and digital?
I do want to start collaging, so I don't know if I'm going to print off the ones that I've done and then rip them apart, or I don't know. I want to start printing and working a bit more on paper just to see what that would do. That's always been at the back of my brain, like, oh, collage, that'd be pretty cool. But I do really love the painting element, like the process of making it and then putting it onto a canvas. The canvas is the finished piece for me. So I don't know how I translate that into, I don't know.
It's nice to come out with a FMP, which is so rich, something you want to take forward and keep working on.
I think it's just something that's just really kind of stuck in my head and I really like doing. So, yeah.
Nice.
Emma, you also had a question for Bryony.
Yeah, I was just basically asking, is the way you've chosen to use a square canvas kind of like, I know you said it was difficult to get canvases while in lockdown and stuff that are appropriate to your work, but was the square an element that you were able to control if the size wasn't, and did you choose that intentionally?
I chose like in lockdown to stick to square canvases because I had tried not square canvases and it just didn't work as well. I think I just like that it hints back to it slightly and I just like the uniformed look. Yeah, so I think
also, sorry, I was just going to say the way you haven't actually painted the edges of the canvas as well, like actually really sort of amplifies that idea of it being very two-dimensional, even though it is a three-dimensional canvas. It brings out the back to that sort of like Instagram sort of insinuation and stuff. It's really cool. I like it a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to open up the questions to the audience. Are there any questions that you'd like to ask Bryony? Gosh, and they're all coming through chat as well. Okay, so Jessica Cox has asked a question. Hi, Jess.
Hello.
Do you want to say hi? Yeah. Yeah. Do you just want to ask you?
why so large in scale? Like when we view Instagram images, so sort of tiny on these like little screens. That's why they're so like these perfect little artifacts where we see them, and you've like blown them up as big as possible. They're all sort of warped. What can you comment on that a little bit more?
I think the idea originally, I looked at Richard Prince's work where he did the appropriation of people's Instagram. And I think I just loved that it was big on the wall. And like I have done, like I did smaller ones as well. But just for me, I just liked the painting of the bigger canvases. I liked how it really like, because it's a person just staring at you, but there are no eyes as well. It's just so much more almost scary when it's just staring at you on a wall. And there's no eyes looking at you, but you know it's staring at you. That's the feeling I always got when I put it up and I stood in it and I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. I think I just like it being bigger. Yeah. It just
present
when it was smaller.
There you go.
And on that point of canvas size, Jess also asked if lockdown didn't impose the limits on size, do you think you would have stuck to the same size canvases throughout?
I think I would have stuck to big canvases or bigger. I was planning on going a lot bigger, like very big, make my own canvases. But yeah, it was basically what I could get hold of. And I could only do certain paintings because I ran out of paint at one point. So I had to then think about what painting I could actually paint onto canvases because everywhere had sold out of paint basically. Because everyone was just like, oh, I'll do arts and crafts while I'm at home. And I was like, no, I can't get paint. So yeah,
you could do those on a wall. You could do those designs on a wall.
Yeah.
If you find a spot, and you could use just emulsion for that. So that's worth a thought.
Yeah.
There are spots. I don't know whereabouts you are, but there are spots which are, you know, available to paint, legal. So you know there are. So that may be an idea if you want to go really big.
Yeah.
I only asked that question because I'm thinking back to Instagram and how obviously all of the, not only are all of the images square, but they're all of the same size. And I assume you see your works as a series. I am assuming that, but they are all of the same person, right?
Yeah.
And so if you were to present them all together, I think to hark back to, you know, the Instagram-ness of it all, it would be interesting if they were all of similar or the same sizes. But obviously I totally get why you didn't do that. Lockdown and everything.
Yeah. Because some of them are obviously a lot like a cropped image onto a canvas, so you've only got like a small element of the actual photo, whereas others are like just a normal kind of portrait. So I don't know. Quite interesting to see it like that. Compared, like two different rooms, comparing them, that'd be quite cool. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. All right, so next we have Jess. Yeah, you look surprised, Jess. You're getting too comfortable.
I know, terrible. Okay, let's try and screen share, shall we? See what happens. I've got a script, guys, because my processing abilities aren't the best and I'll probably just ramble otherwise. So bear with me on that one. Cool. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So to start with, I'm just going to go into like a bit of background about my project and then it will come into the images that you're going to see in a sec. So my work over the entirety of third year has been centered around my grandmother, specifically as a way of me processing her death. My earlier work involved collating archival footage of my own material to orchestrate narratives with the intention of translating my memories surrounding her passing. I use the notion of memory as unreliable and objectively nonsensical as a way to make my videos largely ambiguous. Objects as memory cues, that is, objects that hold the ability to trigger memories that are relational to said object, became increasingly apparent in my work at a time where I found myself accumulating a lot of my grandmother's belongings. Understanding the advantages of ambiguity and the agency I had in choosing what I revealed and concealed became the driving force that propelled my work's development. This saw me actively reducing contextual information that I presented with each new piece of work. I had planned on 3D printing my grandmother's ring, the object of which I had decided to focus in on specifically during the second semester of third year, to strip back physical information that could be an indicator towards quality, and as a way of further distancing the viewer from the object of question and its contextual background, while still presenting an iteration of it. Lockdown happened, and so to combat my lack of a ring copy, I made some of my own at home. Naturally, these were far more abstracted versions than I had initially planned, but this seemed to work out as it just added distance between the viewer and the original object, something that I had already been actively striving to do. I distorted the appearance of these new incarnations further using reflection and digital means. These are some screenshots, so I'll go through them in a sec, of my main submission videos, in which I paired 2 different iterations together to observe how they interacted with each other. I consider these to be an extension of my grandmother's ring, each holding their own respective philosophies and yet birthed from the same source. So, is that the last one? Yeah. That's those. I consider both the incarnations and the original as artifacts, and have done for the duration of my project. I attribute this to my subjective sentimentality and wanted to present both the physical and digital incarnations to suggest as such. It wasn't until the last remaining weeks before the deadline that I started to consider the lines between artist and archaeologist as blurred. Because of this, I started considering my proposed exhibition space to replicate that of an excavation site. Here on the screen right now, you can see my final mock-up version, in which there are 2 levels: the ground floor, in which the videos are being projected down onto and is physically inaccessible to the viewer. And the first floor, otherwise known as the viewing platform, is self-explanatory. The viewer is able to see the videos down below with a physical barrier and distance between them and the work. Perspex boxes, so that's the, I don't know if you can see my mouse right now. Can you see that? Yeah. So there's one here, and then one around here somewhere. Oh no, here. Are placed in 3 corners of the room on the viewing platform level, with which to present the physical iterations within. The intention here is to further represent the iterations as artifacts, pointing to their importance, albeit the importance that I subjectively impose on them. So that's the space, and then I've got another slide. This is literally a screenshot from my PDF file that I submitted for the final submission. This just goes into more depth about like the perspex boxes and how I would present these objects. So it's very much a combination of video and sculpture. And as my practice progressed, especially during lockdown, it did become more heavily focused on sculptural aspects in conjunction with video. And I think because of the nature of my work, where I am focusing around objects anyway, it's sort of going to happen either way. But lockdown definitely did make me focus more on the object as something to work with, as opposed to, you know, like I say, forcing these narratives onto the viewer through collating all of this, you know, found footage and everything together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly stop sharing for a sec and then try share again. Bear with. Okay, this video, can you see that? Yeah, this video doesn't have sound, but I just made it to represent, I'm hoping it's not lagging too much, how the videos would be shown from like a bird's eye point of view in the space. I had initially planned on having 12 screens or 12 projections, so I've got 6 videos altogether, and I would just double up basically the videos that I was showing. But as I was making this video, it was quite hard in Premiere to get 12 different videos in, so I ended up just doing one version of each of the videos. But yeah, I think that's about it. I hope that made sense and it wasn't too like stiff. But yeah.
Thank you, Jess. So Tanya, what's your take on?
Yeah, not stiff at all. I can understand why you'd want to script it. Absolutely, there's a lot to cover there. it's a shame we didn't get to experience that, although I'm not sure you'd have been able to set it up like that. It doesn't say anyway, to be fair. Unless you made one of those box things that people do,
Yeah.
so it's like a little room. Yeah,
it's all changed since your day, Tanya.
Oh yeah, it's got more advanced.
Everything's run by Raspberry Pis now.
Of course.
Yeah, it's particularly, I don't know how you found it during this situation, but it's ringing more significant for me in terms of some of the things we've been going through as a world, as a country, as a globe, during all of this. Those relationships, losing loved ones, and that object. Was the ring just one of many in jewellery, or has the ring got some significance as well?
So I'm not sure if it was like very apparent in my script, the bit that I read out, but essentially I started inheriting, not officially, but you start gathering things that your lost one sort of, whatever. So I had quite a lot of her stuff. The difference with the ring, and the reason I narrowed it down, was because I got this before she died, and I remember her giving it to me.
Yes.
And because I'm focusing on memory cues, it felt a lot more authentic to talk on something that I had actual memories about, as opposed to like for example, I inherited a lot of her like scarves and things, but I don't have any recollection of her ever wearing them. So if I'm talking, exactly.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking on memory cues, yes, I can sort of conjure up memories. And of course, as I said, memories are unreliable. So oftentimes, well, always, even your own memories. So the memory that I have of her giving me this ring, I probably made up half of it, because every time you recall a memory, it's changed and distorted in some kind of way. However, I felt like with this specific object, I wasn't fully making up, her wearing.
It was being driven by the object. It was inspired by the object fully. So which element of this work, where do you think you're going next?
I think I can see myself carrying on making these iterations, because I don't feel like there's ever an end point with them.
Yeah.
I mean, there are various levels of abstraction with each one, and so realistically I could take it anywhere. I could keep going with it. And as I think I said, although they're all birthed from the same place, I feel like they all do hold their own philosophies, and they are their own objects in their own right, and so there's nothing stopping me from continuing to make them.
And in terms of the disciplines, the combination of the installation was really interesting there. The way you've laid out the looking through the floor, and I mean, that could be a start point, couldn't it, in terms of how, the setup. Do you think that's something, because you came to that through the object and through developing the film, and then how you're going to present it? Do you think in the future you might start at that point of installation?
I mean, potentially. My ideas with how I was going to install were changing, so not rapidly, but they definitely changed from where I was initially planning on presenting. Before lockdown, I had it in my mind, the specific room I wanted to present in at uni. And then obviously it all opened up whereby we could present or install anywhere, because it's all hypothetical now. And to start with, that really worried me almost, because I had such a clear vision, I'm going to do it in this specific space, it's going to be like this.
Yeah, sure.
And so I was quite reluctant to start with, to pull out of that space and consider other environments. And I started thinking about the museum maybe, but then something about it didn't feel right, because obviously, like I say, I consider these objects as artifacts, and so the museum at the time did seem like, oh, that would make sense. But as I was coming up with how I would install it in this space, something didn't feel right, and I don't know what it was. So my gut instinct was, go back to your initial plan, do it at uni. And then as I started researching more into archaeology, and the ways in which archaeologists are able to preserve artifacts and stuff now through digital means and stuff, it got me thinking about these excavation sites. And this was in the last couple of weeks before the deadline, and I was like, oh my god, it all makes sense suddenly. And then the implementation of these physical barriers and layers, and it just all seemed to come together at the right time. So
I find
yeah,
it really interesting, the setup. I'd really like to experience that setup.
Thank you. Yeah, it'd be interesting to do. Not easy, but you know, give it a go maybe.
Makes it fun.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I can definitely see myself starting off there, and then it could change again, you know. Yeah, it's always changing, as everyone's work does, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there questions that the audience would like to ask of Jess? Wow, we can tell it's Friday afternoon, can't we? No, I'm kind of curious, how do you tread that line of dealing with a subject matter that is so personal to you, but then also being able to be objective and kind of have a distance?
I mean, this is sort of what I've been trying to achieve the whole way through, and I think, as I said at the start, it was a case of forming these narratives, but also taking little elements away. And I think throughout the development of my project, it has been a case of, you know, each new video iteration or whatever it may be, I'm taking more and more away, to the point where there's no contextual information given anymore, you know, in my final proposed piece. I've spoken about this to you already, Nicola, but I watched an interview with Tracy Emin, and she speaks a lot about how that, like, she values her agency as an artist a lot, to the point where she's not worried about what other people think of her work, because she essentially, you can't, this is why I needed a script. It's hard to like, there is no point in me trying to tell people how it was for me, my experiences, you know, surrounding the loss of my grandmother or whatever it may be. It will only ever be a translation. And I think upon realizing that, I was like, why am I trying at all then? And yet the drive of my project was to provide myself with catharsis and a way of processing these things. So I still wanted to focus in on that loss. And I think the most objective way I could do that was to look at objects. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think it definitely makes sense, because I see kind of like parallels between yours and Emily Jane Pontin's films, where you're focusing on objects, but she actually uses narration within her films, and the fact that, you know, she's talking, and that personal aspect of her talking, how it kind of appears that she's talking directly, you know, to the audience, to the individual, you know, so she's able to kind of tap into the personal and the intimate that way. But there's definitely, I think it's really interesting how both of you are kind of addressing similar themes, but going about it in different ways, using different mechanisms. I think that's really, really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, like I say, I was toying with the idea of, I mean, at the start, and I didn't show them, but in the previous videos, like, it was back in, right at the start of second semester, even it might have been first semester, I was toying with using my own audio as well, you know, monologues or whatever, to tell these stories. So I definitely see where you're coming from, because that was almost my starting point. And it's just been a case of moving away, like I say, this play between revealing and concealing it at the same time. It's been a really interesting thing to try and achieve. Yeah.
And so do you now feel that you've kind of got a kind of template that you can then use for other projects?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially for personal projects, because in second year, I wouldn't count my work as personal as such. I mean, I was looking at advertisements, and it was an interesting subject matter, but that's as far as it went. And I got to the point where I was very burnt out through looking at all of that, because I was like, I'm not interested anymore. You know, you can only get to a certain point with quite generalized topics before you sort of hit a bit of a wall and you think, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm definitely driven by personal ideas. And I think, yeah, this has definitely built that template for me to continue with these ideas without feeling too exposed.
So that's what you take from this project mainly, that you've found this relationship working with personal subject matter.
Yeah. Right at the start, when I knew I was gonna, I mean, it was very general at the start. I was like, oh, I'm just going to do it about loss. Like, that's such a massive, you know, for anything. And then it was a case of, is it going to be autobiographical, or am I going to talk generally on loss? Which would have been a whole other, you know, I couldn't. That is impossible, essentially. Yeah. So I think I've definitely taken something like a lot from this, to narrow things down, keep your focus, and yeah. Sorry, I don't know if that answered your question. I went off somewhere else then.
I think that's a really big thing to come across in your final project, and you know, working with your own personal story. You know, that lasts you a lifetime.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say actually. So with the whole personal thing, I went in and I was thinking, I don't want to make this like very woe is me and a bit of a pity party. And I think that's also what attracted me to taking away the narrative and the context, because it can definitely come across like that. And I didn't want that, because that's not the point of the work. So yeah, that's what I meant to say just now. I've realised that I can still do it without making it a pity party, essentially, which is quite nice.
Thank you. We've got George Tom has been really patient. George, you've got a couple of questions, haven't you, for Jess?
Yeah. I was wondering how you go about building the 3D models that you've got.
So the ones I did in lockdown. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering how you go about building those.
It was really simple. You know, it was definitely not a case of me putting a lot of effort into it. One of them is just literally wire, and I've got the ring here. Can you see that? So I just literally with wire just went around the ring and got the basic shape, and then the other one, I ended up doing a very simple origami version, covering in mod rock, and then putting like literally gravel in it for the stones, and then just spray painting it white. You know, I wasn't precious about it at all, which is also quite ironic considering the sentimentality around these things. But yeah, so it's definitely not about the materiality and the preciousness surrounding that by any means. And I quite like that.
Is that why you find it quite easy to go into the digital nature of it? I kind of wanted to land on the point of the sense that the in a 3D digital virtual, their kind of hollow nature kind of reflects the sense of void and loss. I was wondering if you found that as well while you were making them.
Yeah, I mean, digital was my starting point anyway, and so it felt quite natural for me to then go into the digital, but at the same time I did find it quite important. I found value in abstraction, and obviously I didn't realize that because initially I just planned on 3D printing the ring using like an STL file, but obviously that would have been quite a close replica to the real thing, which is fine. But I think through making these very sort of ad hoc, like low quality sculptures, I really found the value in the abstraction, because it gives me the distance again that I'm trying to achieve, while also representing something that is important. So yeah, the digital was just another way for me to push forward with that abstraction to the point where each individual component, so each different iteration, there's not necessarily any visual synergy there. I feel like I've got a bit of a visual language in regards to, you know, it's all quite monochromatic and everything, but each individual sculpture, whether that be physical or digital, they're not necessarily visually linked. And I like that the viewer isn't necessarily going to know that they actually are linked. I like the idea of giving the viewer walking away with more questions as opposed to answers, for the sake of concealment.
Yeah, I like that too. I like that it is in a different it's sort of it's not just about what it originally came from. It's has multiple meanings to it, which I really like about it as well.
Thank you. I think I realised through writing my project proposal or self-evaluation form actually, that even though my work started off from a place of loss, actually it's sort of become about growth. You know, these sort of transmutations and transformations of like new versions that are infinite, essentially. Like there's no limit on how far I push it, which is interesting because at the very start of the project, I was like, oh, I want to look at the juxtaposition between loss and the growth that comes from loss. And then I dropped that completely. And then it turns out I've sort of ended up there at the end of the project, accidentally. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I just noticed with the process, you said that I don't know if you'd come to the decision before you began this project, I think so, that you were going to use the process to understand the loss, etc. And then it's interesting how this concealment, which I work with myself also, I use my stuff as a basis, but I want to keep my sort of privacy as well. I understand that. And the kind of I don't know the word to use, flippant way you made the object coincides with the fact you've been sort of detaching yourself from that base and bringing it more into the practice. It all seems to have worked really harmoniously there for the end product. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you do next.
Thank you.
I mean, Morgan also says, you know, on that subject matter of concealment, she says the idea that the real object is so special that it has to be concealed from the viewer. She finds that kind of quite interesting.
Yeah, it was actually Morgan who gave me the idea to reveal, like conceal rather the actual ring, because initially my idea was, when we were still at uni, I was saying, oh, what I'm going to do is 3D print the ring. And then within the space in which whatever video I end up creating is presented in, I'm going to have the 3D printed version of the ring on a plinth, and then next to it, the original, like the actual ring, to represent, you know, hierarchies and through just materiality. And, you know, even though the viewer is going to come in with an objective view of the ring rather than my sort of sentimental subjective view, they'll be able to sort of gauge, you know, a difference between the original and the copy, even if it's just through materiality. But then it was with a conversation with Morgan that I realized, if I'm trying to conceal so much, you know, that's sort of my goal, to keep concealing and subtracting information or retracting information, why would I present the actual object even, you know? And I think that was also what pushed me to make like more than just the one version as well.
Yeah. I hope you thanked Morgan for that.
Thank you, Morgan.
Adequately. Thank you.
It's nice that I mean, saying the words is not nice, but it is nice that the audience is like being cheated out of seeing it. I don't, there's something about that. It's like, oh, what is this? You're not gonna know.
That denial. Yeah.
It's like a little secret that's just yours. It's something nice about that.
It's funny because obviously I am just revealing everything on this call right now. Like, oh yeah, it is about this. And I have wondered, and I still don't know the answer, if I was to do this in real life, would I, you know, you ordinarily have like a piece of writing about the work with the installation or whatever. I have wondered, would I even go as far as to not have one of those? You know? Because as soon as somebody reads what the actual work's about, then they're going to know either way.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we're going to have Tomi. Hello, Tomi. Can you hear me?
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Hi.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Wonderful, wonderful. Just give me one moment. I will share my screen. Okay. Can you see?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Cool. So, all right. So I'm not really going to talk about my FMP because I think that in this lockdown quarantine period and everything, it really did test me, and what I was able to produce doesn't really show my artistic skills or talents or whatever. So I think I'm just going to portray what it is that I've created through the last 3 years, maybe an evolution of my practice through my uni career. And it started off with me having a background in painting and printmaking, and now sort of being more interested in sculptural installation. Actually wrote a script as well, but I fumbled a little. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay, cool. So my work explores the subject of the self in relation to the otherness of the external world, where through the chronicles of self-histories, I am able to portray experiences of emotions, mental fragmentation, culture shock, and racial otherness, and the sensitivity of memories. I feel my work is deeply personal, but also healing. It is an assemblage of melancholy, however, very much with the aspirations to have conversations between the work and I on self-growth and maturity. My practice has been a place of exploration of mediums from drawing to printmaking, like I said before. And in my university career, it's been looking at the abstraction of mediums of interest, from painting again, but on plaster and found objects, to amateur video performances, spoken word renditions, assemblages, collages, photo montages, fabric manipulations, sculptural installations, body performances, and so forth. It's been a constant test of what can be done and not really how well, to be honest. It's been like having a flavor of ice cream at different moments in time and savoring it until you get bored, because sometimes a single medium, in all honesty for me, can get old very fast. I found the manner of experimenting in multiple mediums quite interesting and very much satisfying, because the idea of being in competition with anyone doesn't intimidate, and also the idea of being professional in working doesn't intimidate either. It's a very much trial and error process of making things and having fun and learning what works regardless of the politics that surround it. That's it. So I guess in my first year, we had this project that we were meant to do called the artist film. And in response to that, I made this video that basically tackled an experience that I had with one of my classmates, which she probably is not aware of, but it was about getting my hair pulled to probably see if it was real. And I made a film called I Am Not My Hair, which is meant to basically tackle how uncomfortable that experience was for me. And it was me questioning the shock of how unstable that sort of made me in a space where I'm in a predominantly white school, and my aesthetics and form and just the way that I appear to other people who aren't like me is sort of perceived. And so I made a film, and I hope it plays. Hair is beauty sublime. Sorry. Hair is beauty sublime, and that is a sentence which is used often. And as I touch and feel the different textures of what is on top of my dome, growing out of my scalp, I feel as though it is a beautiful beginning to something I can smile at each morning. Whether or not I go out into the world, be it dry or something applied with shea butter, castor or tea tree oil or some chemical from somewhere, my hair is my own. Frizzy, dry, on the brink of breakage, and otherwise, my hair pays a small homage to the journey of my womanhood. Paid for, not paid for, grown myself. I have groomed it myself. It has not been something I have planted, but I take care of it as my own. Like the Creator takes care of his flock. My hair is my own. So I think the artist film sort of started me off in regards to making performances, amateur performances, because the skill set in regards to video editing and performance as well is something I'm still working on. And I do it very much in a happy accident sort of situation where it's not planned, unintentional at first, but then you get the hang of it as it goes on. And that started off my journey of performance, really. And then alongside making a series of different amateur performances like that, I then also delved into photo montages and assemblage work where I would combine pieces or artifacts from different other projects to create these installations that I would make in my studio spaces of paintings and ornaments from home that I would paint on, like calabashes or cowrie shells, and even sculptures of my hand, like this one here, which is made out of plaster. It's a fist bump, fist of power. And from there, I remember feeling like my work was very playful and sort of had a very childish way about it in regards to the color schemes used and how it just basically didn't feel like it was going anywhere. And so around, was it November, December time, 2017, the Libya situation happened, and it got me and a lot of people back home very furious because I'm Nigerian. So, and most of the population of people who were involved in the Libyan situation, where a lot of people died on their way to Italy during that time, were actually Nigerian. And our government didn't want to take responsibility for what had happened, and it was just a really trying time. I couldn't relate because it really has to do with struggle, and it has to do with also people who are trying to escape their homeland for a means to survive and just do better in a more thriving environment. And I couldn't relate to that because I'm not of the same social background. And so that was just an unrelatable experience for me. But just the idea of people dying in very unnecessary and futile and very inhumane ways, the torture that they experience in detention camps and all of that, that got me really riled up. And we had around that time the preparation for the Shared Drive 1. And so I created this mural, which is titled "It's a Wicked Truth." And it was a sort of caricature to illustrate the different atrocities that I had seen in the news or heard on the radio about the experiences of people who had survived the wreckage, or people who had died, and the things that were happening there, and just having a conversation between friends and family about what was going on, and also like it trending all over social media as well, sort of documenting the happenings of all of that was, all of that was created on this piece, which was a canvas but made out of boat sail, because everybody was given a piece for the shared drive thing. And also I decided to make these photos, or take these photographs, which were sort of like illustrations as well of different depictions of power and struggle between the oppressor and the oppressed, still illustrating the things that happened within Libya, the things that happened between the detention camps, the politics of the situation of people being detained, people looking for hope, people looking for a means to get out of, unsettling situations and escape, and people sort of being trampled on, using like a bag of fruit to illustrate oppression and to illustrate the push of power on a population of people who are so vulnerable in a sense. And so, yeah, and then from there going on to another performance called Homage to the Lost Ones, which still had to do with the situationship of Libya. And that was on the shared drive event. Oh, sorry.
Only to find out this is an hour in vain. The vanity of superficial complexity, only their credit now. Calories, elimination, create outcome, circumstances, situations we almost pass through, as we anticipate the hope of great day, and past, and time to pass.
It's a very short video, so I'm gonna just skip past it because there's so much to talk about. Anyway, I had realized that it was a very experimental piece because I was looking also at spiritual divination in Orisha culture, which is from the Yoruba culture of Nigeria. And in a sense, just also having like family lineage to that sort of spirituality as well made it such a prominent fixture for me, because the performance that I was trying to do was an enactment of sort of a prayer and paying homage and respect to people who have been lost during this time, and trying to, in a sense, show a part of culture and spirituality within this moment. But I feel as though the number of people that were there really sort of threw me off, and that's why I did not have the nerve to pull it off for longer, because I really actually wanted it to be longer than it was. But I think both this and the I Am Not My Hair performance started me off in a sense. And then anyway, I went on to do more abstract paintings that still had to do with divination, spirituality, healing of the self, and sort of like just centered around like self-worth as well. Because on the left-hand side here, on the gridded board, the abstract board is actually like a divination board. So those are like the blues, the reds, and all those squiggly whatchamacallit again, the squiggly oval shaped objects there sort of are like cowrie shells, which are actually objects for divination practices and rituals. And in a sense, that was what I was trying to enact during the performance. And I made a sort of shrine here in my studio space, which no one really knew about, because I felt as though if I had spoken about it in that way, it would have been seen as sort of like a fetish, and I didn't really want to scare anyone away, so I kept that to myself. And it was really exciting because even in the Nigerian context, in contemporary Nigeria, having things like this is sort of seen as fetish, because red in the red in that shade in accompanied with cowrie shells and some of the other objects that sort of seem as though they are these voodoo-like objects of destruction and chaos, because the main religions that we have, or the primary religions that we have, are Christianity, Islam, and all of that. And in a sense, this shrine that I was making is sort of paying homage as well to a very internal inquiry into divination and spirituality, and sort of questioning the idea of following a traditional religion as opposed to a colonial religion, which is Christianity, which is something that, you know, my family has been introduced to, or, you know, has been practicing for as long as I can remember, and sort of wanting to delve into that side, but not sort of also finding it as like taboo. So it really interests me once in a while to dive into that and bring those aspects of that culture into my work. And I continued along that line to make sculptures that still praise the fetishism and tabooness of it all, regardless, even talking about it at times with my dad and him saying not to go near it because it could be weird. But anyway, still year 2. Okay, so apart from that, moving into year 2, I started to experiment more with digital media, mainly Photoshop, to be honest, other than film like performances, but mainly Photoshop. And I really enjoyed the idea of manipulating still frames from videos or photographs that I had taken of weird assemblages of, you know, work pieces or sculptures that I have done, and creating these animated abstract representations of really my inner child and subconscious, in a sense. And in a sense, some of the photo montages that I had done, these digital paintings and all of that, had to do with playing around with the conversation of othership or otherness in a predominantly white society, and in a space of feeling very alone sometimes, either socially, and anxiety as well, accompanied by the fragmentation of my mental health. Around this time, I had just been, I think this is 2019. Okay, no, okay. 2018, 2019. Before this time, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and it affected me in different ways. And I think as a way to therapeutize, if that's a word, therapeutize through the knowing of that, was me sort of playing around more with different mediums and finding myself and just trying to be calm and okay through these different things that I was doing, and sort of not really knowing where they were going, but trying to investigate like the situationships of what was happening around me, whether it had been like the otherness factor of maybe being the only African in the set, or feeling like Winchester is boring as hell, and feeling a huge disconnect from home, and blah, 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 blah. But it was all these different things that affected me internally that I needed to sort of like portray in my work. And away from, okay, I'll play this one too. Away from the digital manipulations, I explored more into performance and began to play around with fabrics and plastics and bringing different objects into my performances as like props to interrogate my gaze and also help liven my my character, because in every performance that I do, even though there's like a piece of me, there's like a piece of my personage in there, it's also like a new character that's being developed, which I'm still figuring out. So this is called Suffocating and Exhaustion.
Tommy. Hello, Tommy.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just kind of quite conscious of time, and I would really
Yes,
like.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'd really like Tanya and the audience to kind of like have an opportunity to kind of pose some questions to you about your work.
Okay,
So
that's all right. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible? Do you want to sum up, or do you feel that
I
you've
would like
given
to
us?
sum up. I would like to sum up,
Okay.
and I'll give
Okay. All right.
those to you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Sorry, everyone. I forgot about the time. Okay, so so that was in second year. That was in second year. Now moving over to third year. Third year, I began to be a little bit more materialistic in my approach to making things, combining, please don't be frozen. Okay, combining materials of, plaster, wood, fabric, clothes, LED lights, balloons, and paper together to make these materialistic fusion objects in my studio space, which I'm really sad about that we've left because of quarantine, and trying to sort of like insert myself through memories and the subconscious of emotions as well, trying to create these dialogues of social, economic, class, and also materialism, and trying to show the disparities between both like cost and effect, and how well a piece of work can be made in regards to how a piece of work is made, how professional it looks, as opposed to how effective it is to the viewer, in a sense, because I think for the most part, most of the sculptures and installations I've made in my third year have been very low cost in regards to the price point, and also the materials, most of them being found objects or things that I've bought from Poundland, which doesn't really reflect like my economic status or anything, but really is just because we're all students, and what's the point of spending ridiculous amounts of money on materials? And anyway, so just trying to see how the result of making a certain thing can look as professional or not in any sort of way, and still give you the vibe and feeling of whatever it is that you're trying to pass across, I guess. And I would really like to go into my FMP, but there is no time, actually isn't. So yeah, that's
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tommy. I mean, what you can do is you can have, why don't you have still share your screen?
Okay.
So you can have some of the pictures up whilst we ask you, while we try and get in some questions. So Tanya, it's a lot to kind of like take in and digest. Oh, you're muted.
Thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
You've had a wonderful experience, Rich. So much, yeah. I don't know. The first film, let me have a look. I'm Not My Hair. Beautiful word. I really enjoyed the word. I don't know if you consider yourself to be a writer within your practice, but I would say it was beautiful. I'm interested mainly, I didn't mention, but when I was, I think it was in my second year, I began making film performance pieces. I've always worked with pseudonym and alter ego anyway. I've just made a new one, in fact. I feel brand new, but you know, so I've had 3 since the 90s that I've worked with. And you mentioned you feel like you're perhaps becoming a character in some of those performance films. Is that right? Is that something you think you might progress with?
I have thought about that, like operating anonymously in a sense, and having like these sort of agency names. I don't know. I think maybe at one point in time I might do that, in regards to like maybe if the work that I'm trying to pursue is very much like a threat to my identity or compromises like the integrity of the people around me. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I brought a few things together that I heard you say. It was about at the event how the presence of other people, and then something with your dad. You know, so your dad feeling that the items you were putting together might be seen as being weird, and there's this sense that maybe there's something there in terms of being able to allow yourself the freedom to perform in these situations. So when you mentioned about the character, I kind of empathised with you regarding that, and with film performance rather than the live performance as well. Is that something that struck you, something you think you might go further forward with, the film performance?
I have done both. I think I've done like maybe 5 or 3, maybe 5 live performances, and maybe over 12 film performances that haven't been documented in my portfolios. But definitely I felt more comfortable in film performances because there is like no spectator, you know, other than me. There's no audience member, so it's like you can fumble and be truly yourself without feeling like, oh, someone is scrutinizing you up and down the place. But then with the live performances, it's like there's a little bit more pressure to be perfect. At least that's how I felt at the beginning. And then as I got a little bit more into my second year, like in my second year, I did 2 performances. It's About Damn Time and also Untethered. And I had audiences there. And the wonderful thing about having live audiences is the fact that you can get instant feedback, and they can see, you know, and assess how well or how not well something has gone, and as opposed to you being able to, like, you know, give your own input from reviewing your work from film. So I think both have their benefits, but it's just a trial and error thing, and I might continue to go.
You're very multidisciplinary. You've got all those different things going on, and I know it sounds to me like perhaps similar to myself. I think that one of the useful things when you are multidisciplinary is different moods, different things you've got going on. You can capture it with those different disciplines, and perhaps I noticed as well that you were taking on and feeling, you know, you're very feeling. There's a lot of you're taking on some deep subjects there with the work about Libya, and I thought about myself when I was there. There was a lot of, there was something called Operation Protection Edge around with Palestine, and Adam Curtis' "Oh Dearism" was what sat with me, and I felt as an artist, to allow myself to make art, I felt I had to represent what was going on as well. I had a responsibility to cover these subjects, and I think it's really useful for artists to do that. And what's useful with being multidisciplinary is you can perhaps cover subjects like that and have an outlet, and have something that's all yours, you know, where you can express yourself and be free. I think film performance is particularly good for that. What do you feel is your strongest discipline, and what do you think you'll be taking forward outside of art school?
I think it would be performance and sculptural installation. Well, no, performance, sculptural installation, and photo montages, because I can't for the life of me stop making digital work from Photoshop after you know, performance. It's like one thing leads to the other. There has to be like a continuity of a process from a performance or from a sculpture. I would take a picture at the end of everything and then just say it's not done. Like it always has a greater lifespan, and it just has to like translate into something else. And hopefully when I get the nerve to do it, because I'm bad at it, video editing and animation, hopefully I'll be able to make some animations out of like some of the pieces that I've done in the past. That would be nice. But till then, I think I'll stick to the three. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. It'd be good if you can sort of feed it into if it can complement each and everything that you're doing, as well as your life alongside.
Yeah.
A lot to take on, yeah. Work.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that I've always battled in like critiques and all that. I've always battled with the idea of being in a single category or a single medium, because I get bored very easily and I lose attention on things very easily. So it's really nice just, you know, being all over the place. I don't even care about being scatterbrained in this point. It's just, it's nice to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time and just have fun. Like that's the most key for me, and explore whatever subject that's important to me at the time. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you.
All right, so next we have Emma Davis. So yeah, thanks, Tommy.
Thank you.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Good. Okay, so I have another person on this called Emma 2.0, which is my screen share, but that's still me. So
okay.
As in, because I'm using my laptop to screen share right now, because there's like 5 people on Zoom calls in my house because everyone's at work, so I'm having to like connect to a thing. But anyway, sorry, let me screen share quickly on this one. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Oh my god, how do I, wait, hang on, I'm trying to, okay, I don't know how to make it bigger, so we're just gonna have it like this. Oh, hang on, sorry. Give me, okay, here we go. That's visible. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a, like sort of a script thing as well, because otherwise I'll just go off and talking. But yeah, so to begin with, I just want to talk about sort of my concept generally. So basically there is a Japanese philosophy whereby everything is interconnected. So our soul, our spirit, our biologies, our psychologies are connected as one whole. So inspired by this Japanese philosophy of an all-inclusive interconnected reality, I've been using my art to explore these questions that are on the screen, such as focusing on the hybrid of the man-made and the natural, and examining the presence of their amalgamations in reality and the self. So just to sort of elaborate a bit more on that, when the world went into lockdown, my trip to Tokyo in March was cancelled, which had quite a lot of an impact on me, because like a huge amount of my footage I had planned to get was impossible. So that was quite difficult. But also having the lockdown led me to consider these questions on the screen even more. So where does reality begin and where does it end? The lockdown brought these questions to an even greater significance for me, because we all turn to technology to recreate a version of reality and normality. So even right now, we are doing this on a Zoom call. We have been using our screens as a portal to access some kind of reunion with actuality, whilst in turn disassociating from the physical reality around us in whatever room or location that we're in right now. So whilst examining both the syntheses and the margins of the artificial and the physical, my current artwork reflects the collective experience of the boundaries and perceptions of reality and the self becoming blurred and mutated during the worldwide lockdown and pandemic right now. So just to sort of brush over briefly some of the work, what I was creating before the lockdown. So I've been focusing on the presentation of my artwork a lot within the gallery space by combining my film art, my transitional film stills and digital drawings to form an area of ultimate interconnectivity. I'd also been learning how to use the Raspberry Pi system and coding and stuff like that to display my films in time to one overriding piece of electronic music I'd either created or sampled and stuff like that. Yes, more. I've been digitally transforming my own photographic imagery with appropriated visuals as well, layering and combining them to create films of the surreal, but also garish quality. These are just sort of stills and stuff and like digital drawings, because I'm not going to play films yet. But yeah, I've been creating and editing the visuals accordingly to echo beats within electronic music-based audio, amplifying the film and audio intonations. So through intertwining varying materials, I wanted to highlight the interconnectivity and the boundaries of the physical and the invisible human form and reality and the perception of reality. But yeah, anyway, when lockdown was announced, I did kind of have a bit of I had a bit of an art block, because I did find it quite like hard because of the fact I couldn't go to Japan to get a lot of the footage I planned for. But using art and like drawing, especially initially as a medium of expression for myself to sort of get out of that art block, I basically started drawing a lot and helped overcome that art block that I was experiencing. So yeah, these are just some random bits I was drawing. So yeah, this is some other digital drawing that I've been doing. Also on the right, yeah, I'm checking my left and right. On the right is a hologram that I'd made in my bedroom as well. I made some other bits, but yeah, I'll keep going. Yeah, so these images, I took some of my photos from previous installations I'd done at WSA, and I had recreated the space with new imagery and layering of visuals to create a kind of artificial version of reality, or a version of unreality. So like I'd said before, during the lockdown, we could attempt to achieve and reprise a kind of reality that we would have had before. So like virtual nightclubs on Zoom that I went to, and like live stream pub quizzes and online karaoke, which inspired, wait, it should be a video, this video that is playing now. But basically we can immerse ourselves within some kind of cybernetic reenactment of what we would have otherwise missed out on. So yeah, although its replication of physical experiences through technology are as close as they can be for us right now, the physical computer screen is still a barrier between each person's experiences. So if you think about it right now, we're all sat here just on Zoom, like talking to a machine. That's all we're doing, just in our room talking to a machine. Yeah, I continued examining the boundaries of reality and unreality through further editing of my own photographs and doing digital drawings and sort of rendering stuff and things like that, and exploring the placement of my art within a context that completely and entirely lacked the limitations of the physical. I'll just show you some sort of, oh yeah, these are some more things I was making. These are sort of some, hang on, let me play some of these. These are sort of some short excerpts and looped films that I'd been making. So just to say some bits, during the lockdown, I had felt like I'd been very heavily surrounded by time. So the concept of time for me was kind of all-consuming, but also entirely irrelevant. So we were surrounded by an overload of stimuli every day, yet confined to our houses with so little to view. So time for me was extremely important within the work I've been creating. Although every day so much progresses and repeats in the world, paradoxically, I personally found myself fixating on things so specifically each day whilst in lockdown too. So within my films, each beat of a piece of music becomes I'll show my film, like one of my main films in a second, but within the films that I was creating, each beat of a piece of music became a key moment in time and change of frame, yet when compiled together became an endless blur of constantly changing symbology. The cyclic nature of the idea of time for me was also catalytic in these two, for these images and these little excerpts of films I'm showing, which highlighted the overly recurrent nature of the daily existences we've been experiencing. I have more to show on my PowerPoint, but Nicola's actually going to show my film because her internet is a lot better than mine right now. So I'm going to stop screen sharing, and then if possible, Nicola, oh, if I can find my mouse. Hang on, there we go, stop share. Yeah, so hopefully Nicola will show my film now. Thank you.
Hi, どうも、YouTuber キズナアイです。こっち。さあ始まるこのパーティー。ここはフリー、みんなに降臨。いつものメンバー、DJ。どこにいてもつながるせいえ。人生なんて無つか雨。一緒にいればきっと晴れ。一人で泣いてて出しでんて。みんなで踊ってアルデンテ。ここにいれば寂しくないじゃん。フロア揺らす3人1じゃん。レーザービームで照らす。掲げた手はどこまでもでか。何でも叶う魔法の時間。ワンナイマジックそんな時間。へんてこまいへんてこまいそんなの気にせず踊っちゃえ。さあ始まるこのパーティー。ここはフリーみんな。初めてだって関係ない。好きにしちゃって It's alright。人生なんてむつと雨。甘いバッタなんてダメ。一人でやんでて出しでんて。みんなで忘れて歩れんて。次に伝えたいミュージック。一目見たらほら夢中に。僕を満たすようなマジック。もどかしい気持ちでふわり。忘れたい夜はぐっと。涙をこらえるならキュート。へんてこまいへんてこまいそんなの気にせず踊っちゃおう。Every time I slay people like cheese, crown my head so bow to the queen. Don't take my ideas for free. Pay me money, money, pay me money, money. Pay me money, money, pay me money, 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 money. Pay me money, money, pay me money, money. Pay me money, money, pay me money, 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 money. Pay me money, money, pay me money, money. Pay me money, money, pay me money, 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 money. Pay me money, money, pay me money, money.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a lag that had because my internet's bad, so it was quite laggy for me, but I don't know whether it was laggy for other people, but yeah, hopefully not, I guess. Yeah, I'll quickly screen share a little bit more. Okay. Yes. So, oh, sorry. Yeah. So here are some sort of film stills and stuff from it. You can see. Hang on a second. If I do it like that, it might be better. Yeah, and yeah, I don't want to say too much because I kind of want to sort of, yeah, I just don't want to say too much about it. I want it to sort of discuss it with too much stuff. It's just, yeah. In terms of like putting it in a gallery space, this is my little sort of, I would also have, well, I kind of how I envisioned it as an FMP for my final major project was as you walk in, so the alien, I couldn't see, when I was making it, I was in lockdown, we were all inside. I thought the only place that and it could be watched at that moment in time would maybe be on the moon or on a planet or something. So this is just like a little yeah, mock-up of a sort of version of the space. So these are some other films I've been creating that I kind of envisioned to be on one wall of the gallery space. And then this is like the little version of the character, the little alien, just seeing the film and then turning around and then seeing again the other stuff. So yeah, that's where my presentation ends. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So yeah.
Thank you. Tanya? Oh, Tanya, you're still muted.
Sorry, I keep having to do that because my cat keeps meowing. But yeah, loads of work, great work.
Thank you.
It's almost like I need to see it still, actually. There was so much to take in with the films. Do
you want me to send? I can send a link on YouTube to it because.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, just to say, yeah, I noticed you didn't want to explain the film too much. Yeah, there's a lot of information that I would presume I'm kind of getting the right feelings from that work. The speed of things, the bright lights, the high-pitched music, in terms of current times. It was a lot of information. I was almost getting clammy hands to try and keep an eye on it. I had to kind of let it wash over me instead. Is that kind of along the lines of what you're trying to express there?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's kind of like that idea of everything being all-consuming and kind of alien to us. We're kind of experiencing something so overwhelming where, yeah, we're so withdrawn. So there's this constant, like, in and out of reality, in and out of unreality, like, what's real, what's not, and questioning whether what we're experiencing is normal, questioning whether it's a dream. Like, it's kind of these states of reality that we were in during lockdown are merging into one, from going to bed and dreaming to waking up at weird times. And the screen, like, is that now part of our reality? Is that not? Is that an extension of reality? So
you say the screen, but with your installation idea, was that projections you were going to use?
The screen, the wall that I had was the wall of like the 9 looped images was going to be screens on the wall, and then the main thing I would do is a projection. I think the reason why I would choose a projection for that film itself was just to sort of like heighten the immersive experience of it, as if you're entering the screen. There is no longer a barrier anymore. We've reached the point where the screen is no longer that barrier. We've entered that. That is our extension. It's no longer an extension. We are hybrids of that. Yeah.
It's in the air. Yeah. So how do you think you're going to take that work further outside of the art school? What comes next, do you think?
Well, I think definitely I really want to be able to sort of like put it out there and like show it. And also, yeah, I'm seeing what some people are saying and stuff, and I really like the ideas that like Jess said with like the VR and AR and stuff like that. It's really cool. Yeah, I think just the kind of the way that I like do create art like constantly, and I've actually like added stuff on from, not for that film necessarily, but for me, just I've been making more of a reflection of a self-expression of that kind of feeling that I've been feeling, of like an overwhelming interconnected presence. And I constantly just have been sort of like making stuff. Like at the moment it's still like I'm still feeling like we're a part of this weird experience, like half lockdown, half not, and I'm still making stuff. So until that ends and I'm able to show it, like I'm just still making at the moment. That's my thoughts right now.
How about the sound? Where does the sound of the first sound in particular was quite strong? Where are you getting the audio?
Oh, that's by a Japanese artificial intelligence pop star. So she's completely artificial AI. Like she is literally the performances that she gives are holographic or screen based and stuff. So it's quite fitting. And then the other.
Oh, so are you happy to stay with using audio from another place, or do you think that might be something you?
I've actually been. I have made electronic music for some of my other films. Some of the other parts are sampled as well that I've put together of the film. I've like made stuff before, but like the stuff that I've made, I think like I've really enjoyed making it, and I like the process of making it because it's completely internal and then external. But then equally, like as a process for me, when I hear music, it's so like highly like it stimulates a lot within me that I want to make art from listening to it. Or like, and sometimes it just like I'll hear something and I'm like, that's it, that's what I need to make the film from, because it's created so much like an experience, a sort of a change of perception of something, or even like just I get that urge and I want to work with it. So yeah, that I think the audio that I had chosen were like samples from stuff that I kind of connected with over lockdown myself. So it was, yeah.
Thank you. George has some questions for you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just scrolling back. I have quite a few questions actually. One of them being, have you looked into posthumanism at all?
Yeah, I did study posthumanism a lot a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago especially. I was like really, really into posthumanism and studying it a lot. So it definitely, I think like my interest in it is definitely like integrated itself within this. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. That's good to know. Also, the Cyborg Manifesto by Donna Haraway, have you encountered that?
I haven't, no, but I will definitely. Thank you. I'm trying to. Is that on the chat?
Yeah, I think it's in there. I'm also trying to think of a question to formulate. I mean, yeah, like the immersive VR experiences. Like, have you ever experienced one of those?
Yeah, I went to Tokyo in the summer, and I went to a VR place, and it was literally just me like kayaking. It wasn't like anything interesting, to be honest, but it was still like enough for me to be like, I've done it, but I want to do more.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I think the first one it was like a roller coaster or something, and I was just like, oh, okay. It's kind of weird, but like there's an artist, John Rathman, who works a lot with VR experiences, and I recommend going to see some of them because they are just something else.
Yeah.
It's just like being taken to another world.
Wow. I definitely want to be able to experience like it properly. For sure.
But you can make your own even.
Yeah, I'd really like to like try doing that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know where to start yet with creating VR, but I guess there's stuff on like Facebook and stuff that you can like go like make 360 3D stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah.
Jasmine. Sorry. Yeah, Jasmine's put some really interesting comments in the chat. Hi, Jasmine. Yeah, do you want to say what you've written?
Okay, yeah. So I wrote because I can understand all the Japanese in the music video. I can understand all the words, and I could see it like correlated to some of the imagery, and also at the very start because you use a song from Kids in the Eye. Like she introduces herself in a song, so it felt like her presence was throughout the whole song in a way because she's such a strong like character within like modern Japan, like for young people.
Yeah, I think like I started learning Japanese in second year, which Jazz knows about because she helped me with some stuff. So like I sort of like understand sort of element. Obviously I can't even like when it's that quick and everything, like no. I would have to like read a bit along and stuff. But yeah, I do like for me like her name, like with like her surname, like AI, obviously in Japanese that means love as well. I think doesn't yeah, it does. Which so when I read like for me like as sort of like I don't speak it like as a native or anything. When I saw her name, I was like, oh, you know, I know that word like as love, that's what it means and stuff, and as but also AI. So I see it as artificial intelligence and love. So for me, like her introducing herself was like when I first heard it, I was like, I heard love, and like but then when I heard it again, I was like you know, AI, you know, artificial intelligence. It's very sort of, I don't know. I am really interested in the idea of how like language and mistranslation and the inability for something to be translated cross like culturally. I find that so interesting. So as a non-native hearing it, my perception of it was probably so different to yours, and you probably had a lot of nostalgia, as you said. But for me, it was completely entirely like initially I was just like, I love this. Yes, this is so good. And then I like, you know, so yeah, it's really interesting hearing it from you, who obviously is bilingual. So
yeah, probably I'm like the one who probably perceive it most differently out of everyone, because everyone's saying such out of world like alien experience. But I guess if you're Japanese, you don't feel that as much. Obviously all the bright colors and use quite obviously daring sounds within it, and that was quite immersive. But then because I could understand everything, there's a connection to it as well. It wasn't alien as it would be for like a Western audience.
I'm glad, because I really do want to like play with the viewer perception, and it isn't like entirely isolated to like the British experience of lockdown. I sent the that snippet of the video to another one of my Japanese friends because I wanted to know what he thought of it, and he's in Japan at the moment, so he hadn't even experienced British lockdown and stuff, so he was like watching it completely so away from like the kind of experience that I was trying to sort of like visually articulate. So him again, like he viewed it as something like it was just really interesting, like hearing the different perceptions of it and everything. It doesn't have to be about lockdown for somebody. It can be about how they read it. The symbology might be different depending on the person. So.
Yeah, I think you can really look at it in loads of different perspectives. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Jessica Cox, she wanted to know where does the interest in Japanese pop culture come from for you? And she also wanted to understand that within a wider social context as well.
The interest in Japanese culture and stuff, like I just have I've like always really liked sort of the art, the sort of the films, the stuff like that, and I like started to become really interested in Japanese as a language a lot because of the fact that their culture is so different to the culture in England. It's such a completely different sort of ideology that they hold and everything in comparison to an English, like a British English speaker and everything. And me as a native, like when I tried learning it, there were some words that literally didn't exist in English. So I really struggled to be able to understand it, and I understood it from like one word for them is one word. It has that meaning. That one word to me, when I learned it, had like, I had to study it as a concept. It had like a paragraph and an explanation attached. And so like so I became really fascinated generally like linguistically in Japanese, which then, so yeah, I'm probably like waffling a bit, but
that sounds really interesting. I like the sound of where that's going.
Yeah, thank you. It's I did last year. I was studying the word. Sorry, Jazz, if I pronounce this badly, because I know that you wrote. But the word kokoro, which is the word for like translated as like heart in English, but then when you actually translate it from their idea of that word, it's completely not biological. So for us, for example, we as like English speakers, native English speakers, the word for heart, like we associate like it pumps blood around the body. There's like cogs working within it. It's a completely like mechanical object. For us, biological entirely. We distinguish the heart as biological. We are biological, like we've also got the soul and stuff like that. We all separate it, but for them in Japan, it's like it's an interconnected concept. So the heart, kokoro, encapsulates both the heart as a biological, but also like as a spiritual like thing. It's kind of hard to explain because it is untranslatable to me, which is why I became so fascinated.
Sounds like a project to me.
Yeah, I did try really hard in trying to like break through the translation to try and like articulate it visually, because for me, articulating it literally was impossible. So I wanted to try and understand it through visual. Yeah, so I kind of like became really, really interested in that, and became really interested in the idea of untranslatable concepts in language and how that alters the native speaker's perception and interaction with reality. And Japanese was the language which I found the most sort of like intriguing, and then it led me to then do more and more about it artistically. So yeah.
Great.
I'd like to
quickly
comment on that about the heart. That's very interesting, because it makes a lot of sense with a lot of Japanese culture, how they perceive even robots and stuff to have kind of like a warm heart, and how like that's normal for them, but for us, like a robot is like cold and like it's just like this machine. And I really get that idea now when you've explained about the heart thing. So
it's like the reason why in Japan, like psychologically, I guess, like Japan is able to sort of like exceed so many technological things in comparison to so many other countries. And like I've read some journals and stuff with a sort of suggestion of explanation that their language and the way that they handle things like biology as something which is connected to everything means that they're not scared of the hybrid. So a part man, part robot hybrid is just like not weird to them. But for us, because we like view the heart, for example, like as a cognition of like pumping stuff around, like pumping blood and stuff, we view if there's something which is a hybrid of man and robot, it's really scary for us just based on our language and how we've interpreted that. I don't know if I explain that. It's hard. I'm using language to explain stuff that I can't explain, so it's all about that. So as well, interesting stuff.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you. Wow. So, Jasmine, thank you so much for. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go on.
Before you move on, bit
Yeah.
of a weird situation, Emma, but I'm kind of wondering whether you've checked your emails, because you were saying that you want to be able to show the video, and I'm the curator at Aspects, and we've selected you for the Platform Graduate Award show. So we announced that on Wednesday afternoon, and I'm not sure if you picked up on it, but I've sent you a couple of emails and not had any reply, so maybe check your email.
No, you have got the right email. I just am like being a bit sort of with technology, like, and all these symposiums, I'm just being disorganized, but I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Good, no worries.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Congrats.
Yeah, of course. Well done. Well done.
Thank
It's really
you.
great. So, Jasmine, thanks for your patience.
All right.
Last but not least. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Key themes in my practice are identity, materiality, repetition, and relation between the object and human. Since the start of third year, I have been using the Tori motif, which is a threshold marking secular to sacred in Japanese Shinto shrines. I was drawn to Tori because of my part Japanese heritage and visiting Shinto shrines in Japan last year in Japan, where I stayed for 4 months. And because I go to Japan every year, Tori is a very integrated part within society in Japan, so it was a very omnipresent architectural artifact within my life. I have developed the Tori through installing it in different locations and changing form and materiality. This Tori is made out of pine, timber, and bolts. This Tori has been outside Winchester School of Art since November, and it's still there actually, and this is the size difference to me. The interaction with my sculptures throughout photography has become a key element in my practice and has strengthened the authorship to the pieces to me. And from second semester, I started to use interlocking and trying to use the more traditional methods to create the Tori and abstract the form further. The key next step to explore the substitution of manufactured pine with natural tree branches helped link back to the origins of Tori, where it was originally 2 trees strung by rope. From here, it's all from lockdown. And yeah, I've interacted with it in my garage here. And I've also created a character derived from the Japanese Jomon ceramics and adopted Buddhist poses for them, which has been used as ornamentations on my Tori gates. I've named the character Monmon, taken from Jomon, and it's also, Mon is appended to names in Old Japanese to imply a friendly relationship. The Monmons have provided more opportunity to evolve Tori further and have become a direction of their own, distinct from Tori. Artists such as Takashi Murakami has helped me embrace this character and the layering of motifs, which has provided the opportunity to learn and mesh other Japanese cultural aspects, such as Buddhism. I've also adopted Monmon and the Tori within this ukiyo-inspired marker pen drawing showing the 4 seasons of spring to winter. And also for all my project proposals, since my work is very site-specific driven, and obviously that wasn't possible during lockdown. I wanted to kind of put the Tori in ridiculous locations that could never happen, so I've done this in the pyramid on Photoshop and on the moon. So yeah, that's my presentation.
Do you want me? Do you want me to speak?
Thank you. Yes, sorry. I was doing a you, Tanya. I was muted and I was speaking. So yeah, yeah.
So I didn't catch the word. Is it Tori? T-O-R-I? Tori.
Yeah.
So what's
the eyes at the end.
So yeah, where did that come from? Did you say it was a symbol?
It's the entrance to Shinto shrines in Japan.
Yeah, so it's an entrance. It's a doorway, and
yeah, it's where you enter when you exit as well within the shrine.
Yeah. So, are you thinking of it like that as you use it in any way, or has it moved on in terms of what it is for you?
I think partially that is still the case. Shinto is very spiritual and all of it's in the line with nature. So I'm kind of, well, a lot of the time I'm thinking of, like, if I have outside, it's mapping the trees outside, like really bringing it back to the original material.
Yeah, I think it really works. See, for me, I'll give you a bit of my personal in terms of how I enjoyed looking at it. I liked seeing the red structures that you'd made in the woods. I found that really interesting to look at how that it's made of wood and it's gone back to the natural environment, I suppose. Do you think you might do any more with that, taking them out into the natural environment, or where do you see this going next?
Well, originally, if lockdown didn't happen, I really wanted to take the Tori to the beach and also want to take it to a playground as well to have more interactions with the audience, because I had quite a lot of discussions when I did it by a Kenworth Castle, my hometown. I did it next to a castle at home, and loads of people would come up to me like, "Oh, what is this?" And it really helped. I don't know, bring the discussion, because no one knows what a Shinto like Tori gate is here. It's so alien to them. So kind of bridges sort of the east and west slightly closer, and also kind of question like the meaning of like what this alien object is doing within the Western environment.
Do you think, because you said you go to Japan once, do you think that could become a part of your practice, the travelling with the Tori? The journey and where you're going to, the destination, would you consider that a part of your practice?
I think, yeah, that's an important element within my practice, yeah.
And how do you travel it? Do you drive, or is it
my dad to drive it for me?
Your dad drives you. So do you have to take it apart, or is it all one piece?
I've made it in a way that perfectly stacks all together so it can become just one within each other, but I can't. There's a limitation of how big I can do it. So the one outside the school right now, that one's too big. I can't possibly take that myself. So like the tallest one is maybe like just about my height, I would say. Yeah, so like around 160 centimeters.
That's really interesting. I've done work like this myself, where I've travelled some boards that weren't easy to carry at all up to London South Bank, had to get them on the tubes and stuff like that, and then had people interact with it. So I understand where you're coming from with that. That could be really interesting for you to start looking into, travelling out and the interaction with people, especially at a time like this. I don't know how it would work, actually.
Yeah, I know, like I couldn't do it at the moment because my dad's like, no, people they'll be overly sensitive about it. I was like, yeah, it's probably not a good idea doing it right now.
I'm imagining like a sack, like them put into like a bag, and just sort of being able to go, out and travel with it.
It's quite heavy, so it's not.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Bag, yeah, because it's 3x2 pine timber, so it's still quite heavy.
So you definitely, is that where you think you're going next after art school? You think you'll be doing more with the Tori, or?
I think so, yeah. I'm planning to. I'm looking for something new as well at the same time, but I still haven't found out what that new motif could be for me.
And it will be a motif. That's something that you're looking to find, another symbol, another motif to work with.
Yeah, and that's how I usually always work, because I've been doing the Tori for a year now, and before this I did the Yakult bottle.
Right.
The Japanese yogurt drink, and I was doing that for a year and a half. So that's kind of the way I approach artwork.
Do you think your next motif will be something that is Japanese in origin yet again?
I think it would be, because I think one of the main reasons why I picked Japanese iconography is the longing of my Japanese heritage, and also a lot of stuff in Japan is so unique within Japan. Whenever I look for stuff within England, I never find anything which stands out as this is purely like where the roots are from. Like I haven't found that yet, but if there was something I came across like that, I might do that.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that with your audience they find it that alien? The reason that I asked that is that, you know, I feel especially now, like years ago when I started watching anime and reading manga, people didn't know what on earth I was chatting about. But I think now people are far more aware of Japanese culture. People are kind of like getting interested into K-pop. People are learning kind of like Chinese and what have you. So do you think, you know, these things are as alien as you perceive, or is the reception, have you noticed reception being different amongst different maybe age groups even?
I feel like from compared to back then, a lot of people still know what, like I started to know what like elements of Japanese culture, but definitely no one really knew what edition like the Torii Gate was, because loads of people thought it was like a pilo, like a Chinese gate, whereas the Torii Gate is derived from the Buddhist gate Torana. So, and all the gates within Asia are based off that gate, but there were different religions from there. So some of the Chinese students would like come up to me, and because they knew about it, and we had like a discussion about like what are, like, you know, what we knew about it.
Great. Sorry, was someone going to say something?
No, I don't think so.
No, because I was.
Go on.
No, I was just gonna, you know, I was just gonna open it up to the rest of the audience with regards to asking questions about the work. I've got another question for you actually, because you kind of like mentioned Takashi Murakami a bit. I mean, does he kind of play much of a role or influence in your work?
I would say he's a big influence in terms to embracing the character Monmon I created. I did actually create it before coming across him, and because I wrote quite a lot about him in my reflective journal. But because I've always used existing iconographies, like to make something from my own seem very scary, and I didn't think I wanted to push forward it, but he helped me kind of embrace that. Yeah.
No, I just find it, I find it really interesting because he just seems so popular. I don't know, it's because, you know, he's done, you know, a couple of album covers for Kanye West, and, you know, he's collaborated with Virgil Abloh, but yeah, I mean, his reach seems to be kind of pretty global.
Yeah, he's actually not very popular in Japan.
Really? That's
no,
interesting.
he's more popular outside Japan. Some people really look, like loads of artists look down on him. They think he's too commercial, and yeah, it's kind of gone out into the, not the art scene basically. Yeah.
That kind of like usual snobbery when you've got an artist making loads of money.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Thank you. Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask? I've got another question for you. I know we're overrunning, but you know what? I just don't care. I'm really kind of intrigued with the fact of the Torii being a kind of threshold.
Yeah.
This idea of the Torii being a threshold. I mean, do you see it as a, like, you know, I kind of like thought of it as a threshold in different ways, you know, this kind of bridge potentially between two different cultures, you know, Japanese and British, because obviously, you know, that's kind of reflective, you know, in your life, I assume. Do you kind of envisage it in that way?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Especially like recently, I kind of thought like the installation of it being like by the castle, my hometown, I felt like, these are really like two parts of me. So kind of, I don't know, sort of is a representation of me and like the idea of like going across those two cultures. Yeah.
I guess that's what I was. There's a good partnership there between the fact that it's that entrance, exit, and the journey, you know, and moving to another environment and placing it in another environment, inviting other people to interact with it. You know, there's a lot that can be done with that, I'm sure. What about the colour of it being so, you know, red? Did you say that was for a reason?
Oh yeah, it is for a reason. That's because it's the most popular colour they use for a torii-gate within Japan, and it's also the most purifying colour within Shinto as well.
Yeah.
And the next from that would be gold, and so I'd made a gold one as well. Yeah.
I wonder how that would affect the public, or whether there's something to be done to see, you know, if these different elements of the object can affect the interaction that people have with it also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just kind of like, I mean, your gate at WSA. Yeah, I remember like the first time I saw it and I was kind of like, you know, what the hell? I found it really intriguing, and I felt that it just really, really, yeah, worked. And it was quite a while before I actually realized it was your work. Yeah, and I was well pleased when I found out that you had done that, because I thought it was just really bold, and it must have taken so much effort to actually get it placed there as well.
Yeah, it was a 3-person job to do it.
Well done, well done. It's that kind of perseverance you will need as an artist, I tell you.
That's true.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
Most definitely. That's great. Okay, there's some questions. Cool. Emma, you have a question?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's Mon, your little
yeah, my character. Yeah, my mascot.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering if it has like a meaning, or whether it's just like a sound.
No, there is a meaning behind it. So, because I used the Jomon era ceramics as like an inspiration. So the mon comes out from Jomon. Also, it's like, you probably know, but like in Japanese, you put loads of endings to people's name to imply a friendly relationship. So now you'll say Chan, but back in the day they'll say Mon. So they'll be like, hello Emma Mon, how are you doing?
I like that.
I thought it'll sound like quite like friendly and cute to double that. And also Mon also means gate in Japanese as well, so it directly goes back to the torii-gate as well. So I thought, oh, that works.
That's really cool. It's interesting.
Brilliant, thank you. Any more questions at all? No? Okay. Well, on that point then, it looks like session 6 has now finished. So I'd really like to thank everyone who has participated in this, our final session of Symposium, our wonderful and talented panelists, Bryony, Jess, Tomi, Emma, Jasmine, thank you. Also a big thank you to our wonderful co-convener, Tanya Judd, sorry. Oh, it's been a long 2 hours. Tanya Judd, thank you so much, Tanya. You've done an excellent job, and you're a great representation of a WSA alum. I'd also like to thank you, the audience, who've joined us here today, and many of you have joined us earlier on in the week. And lastly, I'd like to thank all you students, the class of 2020. I wish you all the best with your future endeavors. Whether you decide to do a career in art, or whether you have the common sense to avoid a career in art altogether. It's been really great to see how your work has grown and how it's developed over the last 3 years, and also to see how you've risen to the artistic challenges raised by COVID and the lockdown. So well done. So with that being said, session 6 is finished, and I'm going to hand over to John Gillett. So thank you everybody.
Thank you, Nicola. I was a bit frightened that you were going to send everybody home before I said a lot of procedural stuff.
No.
But you did a great job, and it was another great session. And I think the whole thing has been brilliant. I suspect that Ian will want to join me in this in a minute. I actually think it's been better than the real thing, if I can put it in such a paradoxical way, but a really brilliant 3 days of stuff. And I'm sure everybody's quite tired, but quite uplifted at the same time. Can I just say a special thank you to guests like Vicky Fear. Thank you for dropping back in, and in particular to alumni, even ones that I wasn't particularly expecting to see. It was nice to see Mel Sexton on the list, but our invited alumni who have stayed and come back. I think George has been with us throughout the week and has made really useful contributions. And I just want to point out to all you third years, any second now, you are going to be alumni. And this sense of a bigger network that we have sort of touched this week, it's a real thing. And the people that have joined us this week make that very apparent and very true, and highlight the value of that particular network. And it's a thing to look forward to. Now, if you guests will just bear with me for a minute, I've got some really important things to say, including announcing prizes in a minute, just to keep you on the edge of your seats. But a couple of procedural things first. One is that I should have mentioned before, and I think that normally one would have done if we'd been in the studios, but the ripe opportunity, the kind of selected artists for which Mia Delve announced yesterday, I just wanted to make it clear that everybody's FMP was considered for that opportunity. And normally that happens in the degree show. This year it was via the assessment submissions folder on Teams, obviously, but everybody was in the pot for that. Whereas the approach to the platform opportunity that Aspects took was different this year because of the lockdown, and you had to apply for it, as you know. So I don't want anybody to think, as some people did, that they'd missed out on the opportunity of applying for the ripe opportunity. It was an automatic consideration. So the next thing I want to say is that this is not the end. And I mean this in a really practical way. Please, please, please keep looking at your email. And your email leads, of course, to messages from Teams and from the delightful Blackboard, because there's business still to do. Specifically, this weekend, I have to finalize the yearbook. And I have to say that one or two things that I've seen today, or the way that they've been talked about, have made me think, there's still discussion that I need to have with people about their particular content in the yearbook. So I'll be sending out messages at random times according to how awake I managed to keep over the weekend, because it's got to be finished by early next week. So if you could keep an eye out for those messages over the weekend, and then, which won't come to everybody, just people I need to talk to. And then early next week, you'll get a further, doubtless irritating reminder about the online degree show, the arts thread opportunity, the upload for which is asked for by the end of business on Tuesday. So I've deliberately not laboured this point until now because we had our work cut out with the symposium. But that will be the next thing for you to attend to, is uploading images to the arts thread site. And if you've missed it, there's an announcement on Blackboard. It came to you as an email from me, and there are instructions on Blackboard in the usual course content folder. So as I say, you'll get a chase for that on Monday and a deadline of end of business on Tuesday. And then the other reason for keeping an eye on email is associate status. The school and the university are very focused on creating scope for you to get back into the studio when we have access to the campus. They're identifying times of the week and the basis on which you can do it. And details of those arrangements will be announced when they're announced. But as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the teaching team in fine art is concerned, it's almost equally important to notice that to get back into the studio, you're going to need a university ID. So they'll have to keep that going, which means you'll still have an email, which means you'll still be able to access Friends and even Blackboard if you want to. So we are focused on inviting you back in to join and even lead the new projects that we're planning for next year. And we're expecting that projects will loom larger in the way that people learn and the way that we teach and the way that we conduct all of our practice. And so being part of them is something that we intend should be very much part of associate status, if you wish it to be. So in every way there is, we're expecting your continued involvement with the programme over the coming year. So keep an eye on the email for stuff to do with that. Okay, so, and then just finally in my ramble here, a couple of nice things. Well, it's a sort of bittersweet thing really to start with. Katie Pratt. Katie, as you know, stepped in at short notice to help us run the painting studio. And technically today is her last day with us because the arrangement that we made came to an end, and the university, whilst it's sorting out the future and making its plans, hasn't told us what to do next. So we organised things, Katie and I, so that she could be part of this week's event. And I'm very, very glad that we made that arrangement, because she has made an invaluable contribution to every session. She's been present throughout, except for a little moment this afternoon when Zoom stopped zooming for her, but that didn't last more than a couple of minutes. And I just want to say, on behalf of you all, and especially the students in the painting studio, a very, very big thank you to Katie. And everything that I've said about keeping in touch and watching your emails and so on goes to her as well. So perhaps you can do that clappy thing, which is, it's not exactly a bunch of flowers in the Winchester Gallery, but it's as good as we're going to get today. Thank you very much, Katie.
Yeah, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Katie. And then finally from me, I'm just gonna read out. We've got these prizes. They're a historical relic in a way. They're money that was invested by people in the quite distant past to make awards to graduating students, and they're worth £50 each at the moment, which is perhaps not as reflective of the pride that we take in everybody's achievements here as we would like, but it is reflective of the current interest rates, as I understand it, which is where the money comes from, investments of endowments. So there are 4 prizes that are given in the name of Nancy Balfour. Nancy Balfour was a curator and a contemporary art consultant who was also a great philanthropist. Hence she made this gesture to the school because she had connections with the southern region. So we award 4 prizes in her name, and broadly our thinking is linked to the studio areas. So in no particular order, the sculpture prize goes to Lily Williams. Lily, would you like to step forward and shake hands? Oh, I've just remembered you can't, but the thought is there, and I will email everybody. I should have said this before I started the announcement part. I'll email everybody at the end of this. Yeah, you can clap, Tanya, that would be good. Bit of silent clapping. I'll email everybody at the end, and you have to send me your bank details, because this is an entirely online process, and they'll want to do it next week, the payments. So sculpture, Lily Williams. Printmaking, Beth Ashford. More clapping. Yeah, that's good. New media, Jess Curtis. And then painting, Trish Jayapalan. So I'll have to write to her because I don't think Trish is here this afternoon. And then we have one other prize, which is the Bateson Mason Prize for Drawing. And all I know is that Frank Bateson Mason was a painter who died in 1977, but I've never established what his connection with us was quite. And it may be that somebody else had a connection with us, but wanted to commemorate old Frank. Anyway, the Bateson Mason Award for Drawing goes to Georgie Sutton. So well done, Georgie Sutton. And that's it. That's all I've got. I reckon we could, if we're up for some more debate, Ian might have something to say now about the overall proceedings of the week. Thank you, everybody, and I'll stand back. Bye from me.
Hello. Yeah, I don't know if I've got anything more I can add to another excellent session. Well, I could, but it would be kind of going back in time. But the conversations were brilliant throughout. So, I mean, what can I add to it at this present moment in time, other than to sort of again do some of the thanks that John's done? But yeah, I mean, the only thing I would like to kind of just contribute to is more of the associate sort of status, I guess, at this point. Because kind of what John's hinting at, I think, is really, really important. That, I mean, I guess important enough for me to want to just kind of reiterate it. But it kind of felt as if the conversations today, and which followed on from yesterday and the day before, have been fueled so much by the conversations from excellent conversations from all the recent graduates into this mix. And they've just been remarkable. They've been really, really remarkable. To listen to and to kind of to percolate across. But going back to yesterday's kind of commentary in the session that Kezi was part of, it was kind of clear that the conversations were about how support networks could work, and kind of some of those things were about kind of having crit groups going on a weekly basis to maintain contact with your practice as being a real undercurrent that then helps whatever future kind of like opportunities arise. And that could be anywhere, it could be anything, and it might not even be in the creative industries. It might be in something whereby the application of something really helps you attach to it. We never know where these opportunities arise. And speaking from my own personal experiences of lockdown, I've maintained a crit group going myself at whatever ripe old age I am. So every Friday morning, and I bumped it early. So I had a sort of Zoom meeting prior to all of these things going with my own crit group of colleagues and studio partners that I would ordinarily meet with, just to kind of get through this together. So I'm only speaking from personal experience that we need these kind of support networks in place. So the associate program for me just helps, which means that we can try to introduce these forms of good practice with you guys afterwards. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, how we kind of help to fulfill like future connections with you. So it's so grateful that here I'm speaking across and I can see Tanya here. And it's wonderful always to hear how you speak about the subject. So thank you again for today. It's just been your insights have been remarkable, and George throughout. So throughout the 3 days. That's the only. It's just been a fantastic time. So thank you, everyone. I don't know what else to say.
Thanks, Ian. I just thought I'd unmute just to say thanks.
Well, that's important to do.
I will just say though, when this all went off, I did have a look around at networks. I don't know if, however people felt about that, but it was one of those feelings where you wanted to know where your networks were. And yeah, it would be better to have stronger ones, I think. Anything that's good for that is good for the future.
We need them. And then just to kind of come back onto the idea of the projects which John's talking about, and just to kind of relay the conversation again that we had for the external examiner this year had a clear kind of thing that he kind of pointed out, which was the confidence you guys displayed in terms of the way you were able to change direction in terms of your work to deal with such catastrophic shift. He seemed to think that the confidence that he could see in the work had come out of a long-standing tradition within the Winchester Studios, Fine Art Studios, of collaborating on projects that weren't necessarily defined to your own work, whereby then it meant that you had the confidence to be able to shift your focus and gaze in order to bring in whatever you needed to do to make sure that your submission kind of was make sure you could deal with this. And so I kind of found that really interesting, one to kind of foreground now at this point, and also to say the idea of us wanting to make sure that the projects involve the associates next year is to suggest that there's something really worthwhile about that, whereby just that helps you kind of put your kind of practice or build your practice in a robust way. So I don't know if, because, well, George, you certainly kind of, much of your practice had come out through, or has developed through kind of working with other projects and working through projects. So you can certainly kind of back that up, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I was just been thinking about like the idea of networks, but in a digital sense, and how we can automate those kind of things now. And I'm just trying to think of ways of doing that. I mean, it's something I want to look at in my masters. Yeah.
What did you say there, Tanya? I missed that.
I said he's on it already. He's trying to plan new ways of doing it.
George, it'll be a woman who invents it.
Yeah. I'll just say Jess did it.
No, these things, I mean, this is all true, and it's all so positive. I mean, we're not saying these things just to be kind, just to kind of soften up a difficult situation. I think that the way we're talking about working now is going to bear upon actually the nature of art in the immediately foreseeable future. I think it is going to change. That folding in thing that we talked about yesterday is real, and it depends on networks being at the heart of practice somehow. So when we refer to this associate status thing as something that we're generously extending towards you, we're actually talking about something that we need, and which we think that the students represented by the second years and first years who've joined us this week also need and will find it valuable to be connected with and part of. So is that it? Does anybody want to add anything else? Well, I think that apart from my annoying emails that I've threatened you with, I hope you have a very good weekend. Thank you, everybody. And it's interesting for me to notice that this is a less sad moment for me than it would have been in the real version, as it were.
The real world.
Yeah.
You said the real world then, didn't you, John?
The real world. I nearly said that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to all the conveners this week.
Thank you,
everybody.
Love to all.
Good to see you all.
Cheerio.
Good to see you all.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, George. Bye.
Nicola, are you there still? Nicola, can you turn the recording off, because I think you have the helm presently.
Yeah.
And I don't know